Well, hey everyone. Hey guys, how are you? Well, it's great to have you here. I think we're going to have a very relaxed conversation. You can talk to each other, ask questions, the same for the public. I would like to start asking you to give everyone a short presentation of yourself, not only related to cinema, but also your interests, your influences. I know Maria has like a multidisciplinary work going on. So, if you have to write your little biography, what would it be?
Thank you. So, I am from Brazil, but my background is Japanese, Italian, Portuguese. So, after I graduated from university, I actually studied biomedical engineering. Then I went to Tokyo and did a master's in global health. And during all this time, I was very interested about art and film and all that. But I never really had the chance to pursue this as a career because, especially in Brazil, coming from the family I did, from immigrants, everybody was very concerned about me being a filmmaker. So they were encouraging me to pursue another career. But after a while, doing something else, I had time to think about my life, and the pandemic happened and all this. And I decided to move here to Vancouver to pursue a career in filmmaking. And I got my parents' support, which was very nice. And after that, I've been just trying to, create my own stories, write, produce, direct, and also working on sets to create community here in town and meeting amazing people like yourselves. Yeah, so I'm just, excited to be here and trying to, look forward to a career in film and hopefully make more projects soon.
Awesome, and I'm Javier Rodillo, and I'm originally from Venezuela. I moved in here in 2002, so it's been now over 20 years in Canada. And I began as a musician. I used to play punk rock, and I used to tour in Southeast Asia, playing in punk bands. And so when then I decided to cut my hair and immigrate, start over. And here in Canada, I studied animation. I did cartoons, and I worked in a studio for a couple of years. And then I got tired of being in a studio all day drawing. I said, it must be something more. And so the next logical step was film, because I like to talk to people. I like the social aspect of film. It has to be made collaboratively, and that to me was appealing. And so I went to a program in Vancouver at Langara College for an upgrade into live action, and that was in 2007. And from that point onward, it was one short film every year, for the next 10 years, And then, and that taught me how to make movies. It taught me how to connect to other filmmakers, how to find the money to make the movies, until 2018, I said, okay, time to make a feature. And then, so I made my first indie micro-budget in 2018, finished in 2022. And at that point, I learned how to make another feature with more money. I learned how to finance in Canada. And so now I'm in the second feature, which is filming now in November. So it's kind of a stepping stone, right? So I'm very happy to collaborate with other filmmakers here. I'm always in the indie film scene, where you meet other up-and-coming filmmakers that you just can't wait to tell them how to do it. How I did it anyway. It might not apply, but at least you at least get a chance to see how I did it. And like, I haven't figured it all out. I don't know everything, but from my experience, I know how some things work and some others, especially when it's finding money in Canada to make independent films. And in my particular case, as an immigrant, Latino in Canada, right? So yeah, that's where I am at in my career. Yeah.
Well, a lot of things open up to this. I'm thinking about this thing that you both come from another professional backgrounds. So I would like to know how that influenced your filmmaking career. I mean, maybe in your case, Javier, music is a little bit more connected. And do you do you see that punk rock style and at the time of making movies or in your narratives? And well, what in your case, Maria? I mean, do you think that all that time studying in Brazil also helped your filmmaking career?
I mean, punk rock is great because being in a band, you know, where you start playing with an instrument that you're learning how to play, and then you ask people to let you play on a stage, and then the band sucks, you know, and nobody likes the music, you know, and you play it empty room. Eventually, learn better the song, make more songs. Very similar to a filmmaker's career, right? Except, of course, in a filmmaker career, you have a very big team. You know, your band is very large, but the principle is the same. So that kind of helped me to have patience, because I think that's the first thing, right? We just want it now, faster, you know. But movies, they move very slowly, right?
What about style?
Style.
Yes.
Yeah, the style grows with you as you evolve in the career, right? And that's how I found it. Because when you start a career, you just learn the craft. You don't know how to make a movie. You want to focus on, okay, how do you make a movie? And then later, your own personal style will slowly fit in your filmmaking craft. But it's kind of like maybe to talk about actors, okay? So actors have to memorize the lines. That's a mechanical. They have the mechanical memorize, they walk around the script, memorize. When they go to camera, they have to forget the script because they have to be natural. They have to be really in the character. Kind of like that is style. You practice the equipment, you practice the technique, and once the equipment and the technique is already memorized, then your style will come, you know? But it's natural, I find it anyway, you know?
For me, in terms of connecting my background with what I do right now, while I was in graduate school, I was studying a lot about medical anthropology and gender, which is something I'm very passionate about. So it's something I would like to integrate with my work as a filmmaker and talk about things I find important. So things related to gender, migration, and all that, because it's basically who I am, right? So I still am growing in my career as a filmmaker, so I didn't have a lot of opportunities still to make all the projects I envision, but hopefully one day I'll be able to integrate all this very holistically and beautifully. But yeah, for now, just developing these ideas, trying to think about especially like documentary ideas or docuseries related to that, which I think would be, you know, maybe one day important to change the narrative around those topics. Yeah.
Great, beautiful. In relation to that, I mean, like thinking about film as a field to study, to know, to discover. How is it for you, coming from another countries, to keep your narratives aligned or your inspiration and representation being in a northern country where it's very different growing in the south to the north, and as you both have this very like personal way of telling stories. Have you feel that you have any kind of challenges keeping your identity, your Latin identity, being in Canada? How that like journey is for you?
I feel like my identity is something fluid, so it always change, right? It doesn't matter where I am, I think it keeps changing. Like I felt very differently when I was living in Brazil than when I was in Tokyo, and now I'm here. I feel like the way people perceive you really changes the way you portray yourself, the way you behave and all that. But it is really important to know where you come from and to know your roots, because this gives you stability to then create something that really resonates with who you are. So I feel like in my case, it was really important to connect with people who also come from a similar background here in Vancouver. So creating community and knowing that a lot of people are going through the same challenges as I am. And it's kind of funny because even recently I was working on my short film that now it's in post-production. But during the script writing process, I was trying to include microaggressions that I experienced throughout my life. And then I got a lot of feedback from white male people and who didn't really understand what I was doing or couldn't really see that that was actually a microaggression. So I had a lot of conversations about this. And it's very interesting to see how people react to what you do, to what you write in different ways, depending where they come from. And seeing other feedback from, like people like myself, like females, and who also are not white, who are not also not from here. It was very different the way they gave me feedback. So that was something funny that I experienced recently. But yeah, again, just trying to connect with my community. That's something that helps me to be grounded in who I am. Yeah.
Cool. And in terms of the new short film, are you integrating these, what you learned about the microaggressions into the new short film?
Yes. It's basically about a film about more about identity this time, and about like how you can find a place to belong, even though you don't feel like you belong anywhere. Like belonging within yourself in a way, facing those small challenges around you. Yeah.
Wow. I have so many questions for you.
But I want to hear your answer as well. Like, how do you connect back to
The Latin thing. Yes, of course. Yes. So for me, the Latin connection didn't happen until much later in my career. When I got here, I did not have Latin friends. I wasn't disconnected with the Latin community. So, funny enough, my first outreach was to the Asian Film Festival. So I volunteered and I did a lot of work with the Asian Film Festival when I got to Canada, or in the first years of my career. Only much later, I met Christian and I met, the Pachi, the people that are in the Venezuelan community. That didn't come until much later. Partly because in the first few years, you're so concerned about the immigration that your mind is just like, I gotta focus on legal paperwork, money, it's just not enough space in your mind to go and outreach into like community, it's harder. Later in my life, then I was able to sit back and say, okay, so who am I and what am I connected to? I'm Venezuelan, but what does that mean, Especially after 10 years in a country, you don't think about that, and it's like, wait a minute, you have to stop, and so then I started meeting the Latin community, and it's like, wow, there's more Latinos here than I thought. And it was a conscious decision, because my short films for the first 10 years were all done in collaboration with other Vancouver people who are not necessarily Latinos, I from my classmates, right? And then when you graduate, you meet actors who work and they say, Javier, I want to make a short film. I want to be the star in the short film. Sure, I want to direct it. Great, great, no problem. Perfect team, you star and I direct, no problem. We put our money together, but it has nothing to do with Latino, nothing to do with my identity. It was just the project before me. Years later, I started looking more into that, and only actually recently with my new features that I thought, well, what's about... In my first feature, it was a Middle Eastern drama, my first feature, a war drama set in Syria. But it had smaller characters that were Latinos, Latino immigrants. In the second feature, I said, no, I'm going to make it front and center Latino characters in this movie, which to me was like, what are you doing? How do you, I was so disconnected that I didn't know how to do it. So it was only after I met the actors and I met their parents and I met, the communities like, eating the food with them and sitting in, it was very cathartic for me, but only came after a lot of time.